Hi, welcome to the 2 o'clock Sparks of Innovation PharmaVoice 100 panel. I'm Taryn Grohm, co-founder and editor-in-chief of PharmaVOICE. We want to thank you for spending some of your valuable time with us today. And a sincere thank you to our sponsors who made this day possible and our event partner Momentum. Before we jump into the content, I want to invite you to view our panelist bios by clicking on the panelist headshot in the speaker section below. During this Sparks of Innovation session, our PharmaVoice 100 honorees will reveal how they create a culture of innovation, how they inspire their teams to meet big, audacious goals, and they're going to share an example of a breakthrough they have contributed to as they look to spark innovation, blaze new trails, and ignite change in their organizations and across the industry. We are honored to have some of the industry's most inspiring innovators with us today. Sparking innovation by creating a space that rewards risk-taking is 2021 PharmaVoice 100 Joe Dustin, Head of Clinical Innovation at Bristol Myers Squibb. Rob Goodwin, VP of Operations Pfizer, a 2021 PharmaVoice 100, is sparking innovation by challenging conventional thinking to come up with new ideas and approaches and supporting the team and bringing innovations to the drug programs. A 2019 PharmaVoice 100, Bruce Hellman, CEO and co-founder of uMotif, is igniting change by building software that engages and puts patients first. And Peyton Howell, Chief Commercial and Strategy Officer at PowerXL, a 2021 and 2019 PharmaVoice honoree, is sparking innovation by putting patients first as well. And 2021 PharmaVoice 100 honoree Stacy Wu, MD, VP, Head of Global Clinical Research Neurology at Synovian, is igniting change by innovating and transforming R&D. We're going to dig in here, and this is all about creating a culture of innovation. And it requires unique leadership skills. And our panelists are going to reveal how they set up their organizations for success. Rob, let's start with you. You and an incredible team around the globe condensed a normally 8-year clinical trial process for a COVID-19 vaccine down to less than a year, employing new ways to create operational efficiencies. Some might say you all are saving the world. Tell us about that experience.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. So first, I want to say, a big thank you to all the volunteers and all the clinical trial sites and the regulators and all the partners that really helped us pull forward, with the work we did with the COVID vaccine. It was an amazing experience. I mean, humbling, numbing, joyful. I mean, all these emotions all together, they're all in one. And it was the most incredible thing that I've ever been part of. And, even now as I speak about it, it sort of, brings emotions to me. Because really, when you think about Sparks of Innovation, I think this program really was that. As a development organization, we had been training sort of for the innovation for a long time, sort of like a marathon, if you want, right? And we had been working through, how we organize, how we sort of productionize the work we were doing, and then how do we innovate? And so when the pandemic happened, is if we had been training for this marathon, and so we were ready to go. And, of course, we wish it wasn't a pandemic, but you have to find some, in all of this, we found some joy. And what I mean by that is, in terms of the work we did together, it was hard. I mean, I'm sitting here right now with a sport jacket on in my gym, for this panel, right? We've all been impacted. And that actually sort of creates a bond for everyone, because no matter where you are around the world, no matter who you are, we all have, sort of our ups and downs that we were dealing with, whether it be personal or work. And so times like this bring us all together. And that was probably one of the best things that kind of happened during this pandemic. But if we talk about, the innovation and the work we put on our trial for a minute, so let me describe that. And again, we've been working on this for a while, so we were sort of ready to go, although we never thought we'd be doing it at the scale and as fast as we were doing this, right? So you think about a trial where, you start off with an e-consent, right? Patient comes in and they are randomized either to your vaccine or to placebo. They go home with an ePro device. And with that ePro, essentially every day they're telling us how they feel, all right? They have a sign or symptom. What happens? Telemedicine visit occurs, right? They're talking with their physician. Next, they're walking them through how to swab themselves, right? Then we had our supplier come pick up that swab at their home, get it to our site to be tested, right? So think about all the innovation that went into just to bring that about, to keep patients and our site safe for that trial as well, to maintain quality and compliance all the way through. We utilized eSource, remote monitoring, right? So even trying to keep our CRAs safe, so they only had to go on site when they needed to be there. And our partners were terrific in terms of innovating, helping us to get there. And then on the back end, just with processing information, right? We had bots running tables in the background. We tried some new innovative ways with our head of data management in terms of using AI to help us clean data, right? Looking for abnormalities in the data. So we employed everything we possibly could on this study, every innovation, all worked together across that platform really to bring that about. And I have to say, there's a lot of joy in that because we can all look back now and say, that was fantastic. Not only do we sort of move forward with a breakthrough medicine, but also we had a breakthrough ourselves in terms of how we do drug development. So, a lot to be proud of there.
I would say you have quite a lot to be proud of, sir. So you made the analogy that it was like training for a marathon, but you had to turn this marathon team into a bunch of sprinters, which is not easy to do because they were racing to the finish line to deliver these life-saving vaccines to the world. And you talked about these innovations along the way. So small innovations that led to a huge operational innovation. So kudos to you and your team. Remarkable work.
Thank you.
Peyton, I want to turn to you. You have always employed a patient-first principle in your approach to innovation and focusing on that connection between diversity and prioritizing patient populations. Explain how this has influenced the culture at your organization.
Well, thank you, Taryn. Very humbling to be on this panel, but especially to follow Rob and that incredible story, without a doubt. But to build on that, right, we have found that the patient's first purpose has been transformational, really for accelerating the types of innovations that Rob just described. I think I always knew, right, the power of purpose, but I think we've seen it all in action through this pandemic and how important shared purpose is to driving the results that Rob described. And for clinical trials to be patient-centric, they really must reflect patient populations. We all talked about this for a long time, but now we're acting on it. And that's really the connection that we've made in terms of innovation, innovating how and where clinical trials are conducted. And Rob's examples are perfect examples of that. But I would say in terms of the culture for us, by connecting clinical trial diversity directly, right, to patient-centric purpose, we've really ignited that, a real passion across Parexel. And that's really what has made the difference from an innovation perspective. And I think as a global company, the diversity in clinical research message has really resonated well globally. And we've been very careful to make sure that we are focused on all types of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because then everyone is part of that dialogue, right? It's not a US dialogue. It truly is a global dialogue, bringing our whole selves to the work that we're doing, and knowing the importance of that in the result and outcomes of clinical research has obviously been inspiring. So we have seen the results. Rob's certainly seen the results, and I'm grateful for that in particular. And I think many of us are, but it's also resulted in growth. And I think that's been exciting to see how it's resonated, with our sponsor companies. They want to partner with companies that are focused on this. They know it's not easy and they want results, right? We want to be result focused and, allow ourselves to really innovate with the decentralized clinical trial strategies that Rob deployed, with really putting research into the community. And for me, that's a huge passion, right? It's really been missing because we all have been told it's too hard to do. We have to do the hard work together. And I think it has been inspiring, pushing us, just for new forms of support for patients so that we can be inclusive for everyone. So it's an exciting time.
It is an exciting time, and you're right in the heart of all that decentralized clinical trials conversations that are happening. And DCTs are not really new, but the seamless integration of some of these components is what's really going to be the game changer, we think. And I love that it's about patient purpose and you're focusing on diversity. And I think if there's a silver lining, well, there's many silver linings, thankfully, that have come out of this pandemic. It's about shining a light on the need for more diverse patient populations across the board. So thank you to you and your team for what you're doing on behalf of patients, Peyton. Joe, I'm going to jump to you now. You are noted as an innovator and sitting at the intersection of life sciences and technology. And you're focused on making the whole, not just part of it, but the whole drug development process faster for pharma and better for patients. So no small feat there, my friend. Can you share how you infuse your thinking into the culture at Bristol Myers Squibb?
Well, thank you, Taryn. And I got to say, humbling to be involved in this panel and to be included in this year's PharmaVOICE 100 is truly an honor and kind of something I've always kind of wanted, bucket list, right? This is amazing. So thank you for that. And it's what a great time to be here. If there's any silver lining from this pandemic, it's the ability to try and push some of these great ideas and things that many of us here have been working on for probably 5+ years already. That is finally saying, you look to your team and they say, hey, those things you've been working on in the back room, we need those now. And so that's great for someone who has been trying to push the limits for such a long time in various roles. To me, what do I bring? I'm a technology guy by trade, right? I try and challenge the status quo. I try and bring new things to folks that are probably thinking them, but maybe don't always know how to execute on them. And that's the hard part, is execution. And I admit, I'm not the best either at this, but it's asking the right questions, finding the right people to surround yourself with, and getting buy-in from those around you to go forward into change. If you see, in my role, I'm the head of clinical innovation, but I also have change management, and innovation doesn't happen without change. And while the jobs can be very different in many ways, there are things that we can take from the key principles from both that infuse them into one. And the day-to-day jobs, in some cases, can be very different, but the elements of what we need to gain adoption in something new, a new way of working, is really key. The other idea around how do I infuse my thinking, I like to quote sometimes, and I've talked to him recently, a good innovator in the healthcare industry, this guy's named John Nosta. I'm sure you guys know him. And he always says, and I kind of believe it, pharma is science-centric, patient-infused. And I think sometimes patient centricity is what does it actually mean? Because I believe that it is true. We all are on a mission for patients, right? But we bring science. Like we are the people that make the medicine that help people, and we have to be infused with what patients need, how the experience should go. We have to always think about what that means for them. And I think from a technology perspective, it's never just about the technology and the whole process of actually making that a reality. But I think, especially now, there's a huge opportunity to bring that in places that we've kind of haven't had for many years across our entire industry. So the time is now.
Right, bringing it back out from the back room and bringing it forward, because we do need it now on behalf of patients, and that patient empowerment is so important. You touched on something there about change management. Change is hard. People don't like to change.
Very.
You can figure out the technology, but it's how to get the technology for people to adopt that technology. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's probably one of your biggest challenges. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. So thank you for all of that. Bruce, I'm going to turn to you next. You are working in the areas of, you're working in the areas too about bringing patients to the forefront. Tell me how you're working within this space and how you're approaching innovation.
Yeah, thanks, Taryn, and what a great panel to be involved with. And I completely agree with what the other panelists have been talking about here. The time is now. It's super exciting. And at UMOTIF, when I founded this now 9 years ago, originally working with a couple of patients with Parkinson's disease, we've always been looking at how can we build software that really engages a person to capture data. It could be eCOA, ePro, symptoms, eDiaries, and other types of data to be able to help power those all-important research questions. And I think for us and the team that we're building, what really I think excites the team and ignites that inspiration is connecting what we're doing back to people. So it was John and Sarah that I was working with first 9 years ago to kick off the company. And for us, the more we can connect with individuals, so people with glioblastoma or with diabetes or whatever that condition is that we're looking to support them on the journey to capture data, to solve those questions, to bring new therapies to market, the more we can connect individually and understand their journey. I think that's been the thing that's really ignited the passion among the team, but also that gives the critical insights about not only how do we develop a technology, because I think, as one of the panelists said, it's not just about technology, it's about how that fits within a solution. sometimes the right answer is not to deploy technology, but to think about that person and how do we give them the best trial experience, maybe not just as much for the patient, but for the site professional as well. So I think for us, you really get that ignition where you connect with individuals. And there are some people that come to my mind, what we've learned from Sam, who had Parkinson's, or Mick as well, and others who we've connected with. We've heard their story, and we've really understood from them what gives them a better experience. Just earlier this week, my co-founder was on a call with a group of people from different ethnic minorities, talking about new ways to pain body map and get the measurement of those important sort of pain symptoms. And what you learn from different people, from different ethnicities, really informs a lot about how you need to design technology and solutions. So I think for us, it's looking at the macro, how can we make a big difference to the world, but then go individual, talk to a number of people, really understand their journey. And that's incredibly inspiring to think about how can we help them.
Well, Bruce, I'm incredibly inspired by the fact that you're talking about your patients with their first names and you understand their personal journeys and how you are addressing those journeys through the technology that you're building as an entrepreneur. Incredibly inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing that piece of you. I'm going to turn to you now, Dr. Wu, and ask you, you're focused on the innovative application of science and medicine to help people with serious medical conditions. And how do you carry this goal through in your organization as the head of Global Clinical Research, CNS? Again, a big job.
Thank you, Tara. And again, like all the other panelists, I really want to thank you and PharmaVOICE for this great opportunity to be part of this panel. It is really a great honor. So I'm just going to go a bit back before my pharmaceutical career. And I think, as many of you may know, I was involved in clinical care at the individual patient level. After I finished a neurology residency, I actually did further training in Parkinson's disease and a second fellowship in clinical research for MS. And that's really where I got my first exposure to the pharmaceutical industry and involvement in clinical trials. During this fellowship, I was a sub-investigator for several clinical studies in MS. And during this time, I was able to develop lasting relationships with industry partners. And based on this experience, I had a very strong impression, and I actually decided to leave clinical medicine and transition to the pharmaceutical industry. It was not an easy journey, but I really welcomed the ability to expand my impact from treating one patient at a time to having a broader and different reach on patient care and clinical research. And this kind of ties into where we are now at Sanovian. And one thing that I've really noticed about being at Sanovian that it's somewhat unique to my past experiences is the strong cross-functional collaboration across all stages of the drug development process. Really at all levels of the organization, we have the ability to reach across the aisle and have conversations and brainstorming sessions with colleagues from different departments. So for example, I can talk to my colleagues in discovery sciences. These are the people who are developing and creating these novel compounds that we're bringing through in later stages of drug development. And I can just as easily meet with my commercial colleagues and find out what their key drivers for success are. At Sanovian, we also have the mindset that every individual, regardless of title or department, we have the potential to make valuable contributions. We can use our collective knowledge and experience to reach our common goals. So in my role as the head of clinical research in CNS, I see one of my main responsibilities as fostering this culture of cross-collaboration that leads to innovation within the company. I really believe that it's the bridges that we build that give us this holistic picture of how each of our individual contributions leads to developing new therapies for patients. And for me personally, and I think for all of us at Sanovian, this is what keeps us motivated every day.
That's awesome. And I love that idea of cross-collaboration and breaking down those silos and that sharing of knowledge, because really that's what's going to move the needle. And I'm sure that's what you all have found over the last 18 to 24 months in your own organizations as well, is that the more transparency you have with each other, the faster things go and the needle moves that much quicker. So when we talk about that, in creating that innovative culture, which hopefully leads to execution. And Bruce touched on this a little bit earlier at the highest levels. Let's talk about how you all are developing high-performing teams and how you keep them inspired to what Jim Collins coined as big, hairy, audacious goals, because there's a lot of goals out there that still need to be met. So Bruce, let's turn to you. What are some of the traits you look for in team members?
Yeah, well, it's been really exciting this year. We've expanded our team with some really incredible people, fantastic set of experiences. They come with a real, exciting outlook on what we can do together to make this impact. What's been great for us is hiring people who really care. They're experts in various disciplines, but I think a trait with everybody on the team, they really care, and they really care about making a difference for every individual, every patient, giving them a better experience. Then we'll get more data, and let's give a child, a nurse or a doctor or coordinator, give them a better experience. So I think we're really caring, and that passion with the team hopefully comes across in how can we build our software, design our software, and serve the sponsors and ultimately the patients we're working for. So I think that's one of the things that we're really looking for: people who care, who want to make a difference. And maybe just a second thing, looking for people with diverse backgrounds, and different experiences as well. So not just everybody who's come from, a particular, our industry, but people coming in from outside, because, we can learn more sometimes from TikTok, Instagram, or whatever the latest app is on your phone than we do from looking inside the industry. The key thing we've always learned, we're competing for time. Why should someone come and use our app to capture their study data instead of going and using all of those other great consumer experiences? We need to learn as much from them and then couple that with the experience and expertise for quality management, GCP, and all of the stuff that we need to do to get the right quality of data. We want the quality of data for the industry coupled with the quality of experience that comes from consumer. So it's the combination of those two things we look at, an inquisitive mindset of people who care.
I have to apologize. We had a power surge and I lost my internet. This is what happens when you're live. So my apologies to all of you. I'll pick right back up then. So I'm going to turn to you, Dr. Wu, and talking about drug development is a bit of a roller coaster. How do you keep your teams inspired through this whole process? Because it's a long process.
Yes, it definitely is. And it's a very great question. And I think it's a common theme that we've already touched upon in this panel is really the patients. And I think it's one thing that we can all relate to. At the center of everything we do is patients. At Synovian, we really try to keep our mind focused on the potential impact that we can have on the lives of patients. As some of you may know, Synovian is focused on the field of neuroscience, and it is one of the more challenging within drug development. We have seen some companies shy away from CNS, but we are committed to neuroscience at Synovian and developing new therapies for these difficult to treat disorders. And I think really what it is that, at the heart of everything we do are the patients. And I think almost all of us have, family members or close friends whose lives have been touched by CNS disorders. I think it's this understanding that makes each of us realize that every day our work at Synovian has meaning and brings us closer to developing a new medication for those patients in need. We are really in it for the long haul, and we keep our minds on the end goal. Each day may bring some challenges, but we continue with the knowledge that each day we are one day closer to bringing that new therapy to patients.
That's so inspiring that every day you think you're one day closer. Yeah. And it really gives patients hope, because that's really what we're living now, is in this hopeful place where we can bring medicines that matter to market faster. Joe, as head of clinical innovation, you say you're a tech guy, but you're also a people guy. So what are those leadership traits that you look for when you're building out your teams?
I mean, I love people. I think it's what makes the world go round, right? And so first off, I have an amazing team, and they're working across the lens and remit of innovation and change management. So shout out to them who do the good work every day that helps us to push these new ideas and innovations forward and then help change how we work. We can't do it without them. By the way, shameless plug, we're hiring, and you can go check out my LinkedIn profile for more people if you want to be part of part of the fun, because it is rewarding as well as fun to help change what we're doing. I think the kind of people that I look for. So first, I have to have diverse backgrounds, not just in professional experience, but I think personal experiences. I think that brings new ideas. It defines who we are, right? For the longest time for me, I think, work takes over your life in some cases. And when it doesn't feel like work, well, then it feels like your life's mission in some cases. But I think people that also have other parts of their life that are not work, that can bring those experiences to bear, really help us all do better and bring maybe some things that not everyone always would think about. And so that's important, I think, to have a diverse team. I think also you need to be okay with an SOP for things that have no SOPs. And in a very SOP-driven world, we're so guarded by that. And I get it. In a regulated industry, we need to be, and they have to be ready for inspections and things like that. But when you're trying to push ideas forward to experiment, you have to be there to help the folks that are used to having things in a very specific way and need to help them. So like my team has the resources to help them. And but we don't always have an SOP for what we're doing. So that's important. And they have to be okay with that, right? The team has to be okay with uncomfortable conversations. We run into study teams and a lot of resistance and also folks that are very willing, but then later on sort of jump up and say, wait a minute, that wasn't what I thought it was. And uncomfortable conversations lead to more comfortable outcomes. I think eventually you have to have the hard conversations in some cases early and at the right time. And the team has to be okay with that and not shy away from it. They need to be open-minded and empathetic, I think, because in everything we do, both at my company and I'm sure everyone here, there's never enough resources to do what you need. And they're never plentiful. And so people are stressed. And but to be empathetic to what they're dealing with, not only on our own team, but with the teams that we're asking to do something new, is difficult, especially now. We're going through a lot of change in the world, in individual companies, and I recognize that. And finally, I think they need to feel empowered to make their own decisions. And this can be difficult based on team structure, based on company bureaucracy, and anywhere this happens. But I struggle with this sometimes as well, to try and find the gateway to make this possible. But that if you have people that are confident in what they're doing and you're given the space to do it, that leads to successful teams.
SOPs for your SOPs. So you got to build
that's my
plane
headline.
while you're flying the team, right? And you got to figure out, and that takes special leadership skills to be able to do that and to guide people in new ways of thinking and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that also that's an important skill set to have. So kudos to you, and shameless plug or not, now I'm going to have to get everybody to put up their help wanted signs up. So Peyton, you lead a global team of numbering in the hundreds, if not thousands at this point. What leadership skills do you employ to get the most out of your talented cohorts?
Yeah, great question. A great panel to build off of some of these fantastic comments. We care, as Bruce said, is actually been our guiding principle. So we're completely aligned with that, and putting the patient at the heart of what we do has been critical, and creating a safe space. So I think, Joe, I'm going to build on all three of your comments. That collective inspiration, it has to start with that purpose. But I do think as leaders, especially globally and through a pandemic, our energy and our passion being visible is more important than others. Everyone is watching and modeling what we do. I had a leader recently say, well, do I have to have my video on? And I said, yes, because you literally are setting the standard for everyone else, right? That is the bar. And we have to lead that way. And it's different, and it can be uncomfortable, but it's the reality of what we need. And it's also authentic, right? I mean, just like Rob was saying earlier, we're seeing him in his home gym. I mean, we are really bringing our whole self with us in a new way, and we can use that to our advantage in many ways. I know I feel closer to my global team than ever before, because I am seeing people in their homes in Germany and China, et cetera. I mean, it's just completely different. And I think it's an advantage. In terms of skills, that authenticity as leaders is critical, that transparency, tell the truth and tell it fast is really critical right now. But agree with Bruce that we have to keep showing we care, caring for our customers, but caring for our colleagues, and modeling that. And the one thing I would add that I think builds a little bit on, Joe, your comment is creating a safe space for innovation. I've always said you can't innovate if you can't fail, right? And in a regulated environment, failure is not an option. So you have to have a way to be able to make mistakes, get back on, right? And get to success ultimately, but it will require failures along the way. And there was a great Simon Sinek quote to this that I thought of, Taryn, when I was watching one of your earlier panels today. And I think I have this almost right. If the challenge we face doesn't scare us, it's probably not that important. And I just feel like that's, so true about what we're doing right now. And it's okay, right, to feel like, wow, this seems impossible, but yet I know I can do it.
Peyton, you couldn't have said it. It's awesome. Exactly right. If it's not scary, then it's really, is it worth doing? Because you're not pushing the boundaries then. And then
Right.
Are you really making that difference? And I loved your comment about modeling good behavior, because that's what good leaders do, is they model the behavior they want their teams to follow. And authenticity is so important because it creates trust. And that's what then leads to high performing teams. Rob, as noted earlier, you have led such an incredible team to bring a vaccine to market in an incredibly short amount of time. You noted that it was exhausting, that it was daunting, it put incredible pressure on your teams. So I think everybody wants to know, how did you keep your team revved up at the highest levels? In some cases, probably working 24/7 for multiple months.
Oh, good question. And I want to be honest, it wasn't me. I mean, it's everyone, right? So, you start from our mission, which is behind me, right? Breakthroughs that change patients' lives. Great way of just getting everybody aligned with what we're trying to do. And our CEO, Albert Bourla, was very clear from the beginning of what we need to do. He published a 5-point plan that said, essentially, right, we were going to share our tools and our insights, our clinical development capabilities, marshal our people, offer our manufacturing capabilities, and prepare for whatever came next, right? So it was very clear from the very beginning of what we all needed to do. And when you have that clarity of purpose and mission, it does lead you very well, right? On the people side, listen, no one on this team was any different than anyone else that's on this call, the teams you all lead, right? I mean, we were, up and down every day. But if there's ever a time to have big ears, it's now. And what I mean by that is it's a good time to be a good listener, right?
Love that.
So that matters right now because people are struggling with everything. And on why we were working 7 days a week, what we all had was each other. And so, Peyton mentioned, caring for people. Virtual hugs matter every day. It'd be great the day that it doesn't have to be virtual anymore, because, when we were able to, announce the results, it would have been great if we could have been in a room and hugging and kissing each other, right? But virtually, we were all there. And it's things like that that really keep you together. From a leadership perspective, you mentioned some of it already, just authenticity. That's what you need right now. And clarity of mission, right? So every day, this relentless sort of focus on the mission. And in this case, we're very focused on the competition, which in this case is the virus, right? Nothing else. The only competitor that we're up against and still up against is that virus. And so when you have a mission like that, it's very easy to rally the troops around that, right? And kind of pull that forward. So, we did a lot of things like many of you do. I mean, we were teasing about virtual happy hours and just, pictures of joy, moments. When my son graduated from college this year, I sent a note to the team and thanked him because I was able to be there.
Oh,
I mean, that was amazing, right? Because I know the year before, parents that had kids graduate from college couldn't be there. And so sharing moments like that, I think across the board do matter because it really shows to each other how we're all making a difference. So leadership in this case, for me, actually was probably easier because people were so aligned. And, everyone stepped up every single day. So when I needed support, there were leaders that were helping me every day, right? And people that you might not think of being leaders would step up. One thing that I have to say, I mentioned the marathon, right? Well, there's something about working on these programs that gives you such a sense of pride, it's hard to break away. So the biggest problem we have actually is getting people to take a break, getting people to take a vacation. We actually have to literally, track and make sure people are taking time off because they become so addicted to the purpose and what we're trying to do that it's hard to break them away. And of course, that can become unhealthy, right? So as a leader, one of the things we have to do is make sure people are taking time for themselves, taking a break, and enjoying their family. So, I'd say I'm very proud to be on this team, right? Very proud to work for this company and the mission that we have. And, if there's ever going to be a career highlight, for me, it's probably this. So thank you.
Well, that's amazing. And that clarity of purpose and that clarity to the mission that is all collective is quite inspiring. And I liked how you put it, the only competition is the virus, because we have seen the pharmaceutical and life sciences industry band together as never before to fight that common enemy. And I loved your comment about the big ears, because that really leads to one of those leadership skills of empathy that Joe touched on earlier as well, in terms of listening to your teams and understanding what's important to them. And it was a skill that was pretty underrated, pre-pandemic. And now we're hearing leaders step up and say, no, this is really important. So thank you all for that wonderful insights and for all of your pearls of wisdom. Let's talk about some of these breakthroughs. Innovations in the life sciences space can be measured as huge leaps forward in science or smaller, yet just as important changes in a process or approach. And we've touched on some of those. Before we get to our Q&A, and I'd like to remind our audience to use the chat function to share your questions for the panel, let's do a rapid fire round. What is an innovation or a breakthrough that you have played a part in that brings you professional joy? Dr. Wu, let's start with you. Stacy?
Thank you. I think, Rob alluded to this in his last response that, for some of us to work on these development programs for novel medication, that really is the professional joy, that it's hard to tear people away from these exciting programs where we know that, we're working all together to make a difference for patients. I think for me right now at Sanovian, one of the most important aspects that brings a lot of rewards is working on this phase 3 program that we have currently underway. We have a new medication under evaluation for the treatment of schizophrenia called ulotaront. And what's really exciting for us is that it has a novel mechanism of action. And so it's different than all the other medications currently available to treat schizophrenia. And it's received breakthrough designation from the FDA. So I think when I think about what we're doing at the company, I think about the novel approaches that we have to drug development, the novel approaches that we have to treating psychiatric disorders, and that brings a lot of professional joy to me. And I think also for many other people at the company, the knowledge that we're working on these important compounds to treat CNS disorders is rewarding for people every single day. And so I think that's my biggest professional joy, is to work on these important development programs.
Well, that is joyful. And the work that you're doing is so important and bringing joy to patients. Amazing. And Peyton, you're up.
I love on a Sparks of Innovation panel how many times I've heard the word joy. I mean, that is actually pretty special. And for me, the joy in my career has, and probably the consistent theme has been about patient access to care and patient access to new therapies. And grateful to have been part of the first generation of patient access and support programs that are now really the standard across products that are launched. Now I'm trying to get to that standard in clinical trial diversity. I can tell you we're not there yet, but that is the common joy. And I'm seeing the progress. We're just not all the way there.
Yeah, but it's those incremental steps that give you a lift, right? They give you the air beneath your wings. And so love that. And Bruce, I'm going to turn to you, and I'm going to promise I'm not going to lose my internet connection this time.
Great. Well, I think for me professionally, it was one of the first studies we were involved with a few years ago. And we engaged 13,500 people to use their own devices to take part in a study, eConsent, ePro, symptom tracking. And we looked at how this weather could affect people's symptoms of chronic pain and pain overall. So it's a question that's been sort of on our minds collectively as people for hundreds of years. Does the weather affect my rheumatoid arthritis? And we launched this huge study. We engaged so many people, and many of them, thousands, tracked their data every day for 6 months. And it helped our partners shed some light on a question that's been, it goes back to Hippocrates. Since then, people have wondered, is there a link? And what was great for us is because we designed a tool, got it out to people in a way that they could use it easily, but in a context of use that engaged them. People loved taking part. They loved answering the question. The write-up was in Nature. There was an association between weather and pain, which was interesting. But most of all for us, it was how many people said, this is great. I love taking part, many of whom continue to use the technology. But it was really sparking that interest for me in how could we engage people and give the research something they've never had before. For me, that's been so fulfilling, and it brought us and me into this exciting industry now, which I'm delighted to be in.
So your E, I love that, all about the E, engage, eCOA, eSource, all of that E. And
Enthusiasm.
I love enthusiasm. And I'm glad you validated the fact that when it rains, my knee hurts. So thank you for scientifically giving me that piece of information. At the end of our day, we have our Ignite happy hour. And one of the trivia questions that was put forward by one of our panelists. And tune in later and see how this all connects in terms of weather. Joe, let's turn to you. What brings you joy?
For me, it's the light bulb moments. It's the moments where you're in a meeting and then you see the light bulb go off when you're trying to either pitch something or get an idea across. And if someone finally says, I get it. Wait, we could do that? Yes. And that's happened in a couple different situations. It's happened both to me personally, and it's happened to the people that I've been trying to get to have that moment. And so I see it both sides. And there's a few areas that transcend, I think, my career, not just here, but in other places. And some of which I'm trying to have happen here as well. First off, I think helping to get the idea of decentralized trials through, to get not just as an idea, but actually to get companies to say, yeah, that's actually different than what we're doing, and we should do that at a big effort to do so. Being involved in that in a couple different situations has been rewarding to see that start to go. I think also the situation and area of digital endpoints and mobile health. I was involved in some of that stuff earlier on and seeing that come through. So a long way to go there. But the idea of when you see someone that says this could actually change medicine and change the way we collect information to develop and look at and remotely monitor, patients in different ways, again, tied down to what's happening now, becoming more important. That's a light bulb moment for me that others finally see. And I think that brings me personal joy is just being involved in seeing when you start something from an idea and have it actually happen, and then have it actually be used, and then have it not be talked about as a new thing anymore. That is, to me, the moment I look for.
And that's where we're hoping to get to with DCTs, right? That it's not the new way of doing clinical trials, but really the only way to do clinical trials. In most cases, I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but
giving patients the choice. That's the key. Yes, the choice exactly. Of how to engage.
Exactly. We're going back to Bruce's E. So absolutely. Let's take it home, Rob.
All right.
Tell me about joy. I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, but.
Well, I have a lot of joy, but I'll try to narrow it down for you. But, really it's around the people and not going backwards. And so what do I mean by that? We progress so far forward in the worst of times, right? And as we move into the, if you want, I'm going to call it the good times, right? We don't want to go backwards. And what brings me joy is that, here at Pfizer, our teams are sparked, right? So we talk about DCTs. We don't think about it as decentralized trials. We think about decentralized visits. 48% of our visits now are at home or closer to the patient, right? So it's where teams actually now want to be innovative. They want to do more. And as Joe said, when you get to that point where you don't have to worry about the SOP to cover the SOP or to, kind of have those tough conversations all the time, it becomes such a joy. When you're being pushed for the new innovation and not trying to push an innovation on the teams. So I love that. I mean, people are thinking bold and they've really stepped forward and, listen, that's what we all hope for, right? And so it's happening.
Right. And to use a trite saying, let's not put that toothpaste back in the tube, right? Let's just keep our eyes in the front and keep moving forward, because you're right, there is no choice. Patients are waiting for these innovative medicines, and we need to keep our eyes on the prizes. I am so inspired by all of you. It is no surprise to me why you are PharmaVoice 100s. I have gotten to know you over the years, and now you've just shared your inspiration with our audience. So thank you so much for being authentic and bringing your whole selves to the panel. So appreciate these insights. We have a number of questions coming in, so I'm going to turn to our audience. I'm going to get them some airtime. One of the questions that came in is, what is the one thing you've learned along your career journey that has stuck with you to this day? Who would like to kick us off? What's the best piece of career advice you ever received, or the best learning you've ever taken in? Peyton, you're nodding. I'm going to put you in the hot seat. Let's go, girl.
All right, I'm ready. The one that came to my head just now is one I've shared, and it's the importance of performance capital. We often think about performance-based rewards, but often, especially women and the imposter syndrome, et cetera, don't think about the importance of performance capital and being able to articulate what you're doing, no matter what the role, and really be able to talk about it just like a P&L. Right, be able to articulate that value that you've driven and be able to bring that home to your boss, to your peers, et cetera. And performance capital, when I talk to particularly people trying to grow their careers, that probably is one of the best advice lessons I ever got. And I got it early in my career, and it's made me always reflect on delivering that and also communicating that. And it ties to everything you do and the type of people I want to reward on my team as well.
So a KPC and not a KPI. Exactly. I love it. I love it. Anybody else want to share one of the pieces of advice that they've been living through in their career?
I think I'll share one, which is it's a mistake I've made, actually, which is, as opposed to enjoying the moments, I was always looking ahead. So when I was younger, like, what's next? What was the next thing that I was going to be looking to do, et cetera, et cetera. And I think sometimes I missed the joy in some of the moments I was in the roles I was in, because I was too busy looking forward. So if I could go back and be the younger Rob, I think I would enjoy a lot more some of the things that I was doing at that time in the moments I was in.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice, right? roll back that time machine and say, this is a moment to savor.
That's right.
So
I would probably do something about my hair too now, right?
And that's what makes me too. That's what makes it so important to stop every day and embrace that joy, which is really why I wanted to bring that question to bear, because it's those small moments and it's a long career and you spend a lot of time doing work on behalf of others. So I wanted to understand where you all derive joy from. Another one of the questions that came in, and Rob, back on the hot seat for you, because this was directed to you, is, and obviously everyone can jump in, where is the industry going and how did COVID teach everyone, through pharma companies, providers, regulators, to work at light speed? What changed? Was it just this sheer urgency?
So, it's a very good question. And I don't think it was any one factor. I mean, we could all say it's the pandemic. I mean, clearly that played a role. But we were all sort of at the verge of kind of moving this forward. And you think about light speed, the regulators played a big role in this. So the fact that they were there, I mean, the FDA in particular worked tirelessly 24 hours, right? Trying to help everyone with their designs, making sure studies were well run, et cetera. I mean, they were amazing, right? But I do think what light speed now means is that things that you put on the table and say, I can do that next week, you question, why can't I do that right now? And really, why can't you, right? Something that you would say, I'm going to call about tomorrow in light speed, why don't you do it right now? And so it is a shift of a mindset. It's easy to say the word light speed, and we use the words light speed a lot. It is a mind shift. It really is. It's extreme focus on the work that you're doing, right? And not having any distractions, right? And so it's an incredible time. And I see more companies wanting to move in this quote unquote light speed direction because it makes good sense.
It does make good sense, but managing that light speed, that's another one of those change management pieces of the equation that is going to be take some time to figure out. Not to use time as a pun, but here we are, and we do want to act with urgency. We do want to address the challenges that lie ahead. So I like to think, if we did this for COVID, could we work at light speed to address Alzheimer's, Parkinson's?
Right. Why can't we? Why just COVID? right?
Right.
So
Can we take those lessons and extrapolate them to other diseases that we have been trying to unlock the keys to, but have yet been successful?
That's right. You know, my boss, he had created a motto at one time, probably 5 years ago, and it was time is life and every minute matters. And if you're a patient, every minute matters. Every minute you're waiting for that next breakthrough that may change your life or that of a loved one. And with that mindset, when you think about it, why not light speed? Why can't we do this for other medicines that are, that are plaguing our society? So, yeah, let's not go backwards.
No, let's not go backwards. I agree. Joe, you're nodding your head. Did you want to add in there?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, it's an interesting equation of what creates the next light speed for the next thing, right? It's a global nature, an enormous amount of funding, resources, and public opinion drive, if you will, right? But you think about the idea of change. I mean, if you implement those kind of things, Lightspeed can be applied to a number of different things. There's these giant initiatives that we see with what happened with COVID. And by the way, I like how we see regulators across the world now are really actually actively working to make sure we don't slip back into what was once there, and having new policies in place so that people now have confidence in some sort of documented way that what they're doing will not be called into question later. This is so important to make this stick as a nod going back, and especially in Europe, it's happening now. That our industry is inherently risk averse, and when you take away the risk, things happen. When you reimburse doctors the same for telemedicine visit as you do for a regular visit, they all of a sudden are all on telemedicine, right? There's a follow the path, right? And the same way, if you think about internally at any company, and I think about this in innovation too. And if you take away the risk of, it's not taking away the accountability of someone's work. But if you take away the fear of failure and that you'll be penalized for that failure from somebody, then they will flourish in innovation and take a risk, because you look at pull people's heartstrings. What causes them to say no, right? And if we can do that in our daily job, and like a lot of this is persuasion and like business 101 and maybe 102 in some cases, but that is, I think, the secret to getting people to try something different when it is not considered popular or accepted, or these are things I think we need to think about in more than just a giant Lightspeed initiative.
And it goes back to our earlier conversation about creating that safe space for innovation.
Yeah.
Because if
That's
you're
hard to do.
afraid to fail, you're never going to try, right? Because who wants to be deemed a failure? But failure is just the last attempt before you succeed. And so maybe we need to recast what failure means in our world. Stacey, would you like to weigh in? I saw you nodding your head. So let's talk about how you manage, because you obviously have to deal with a number of failures in drug development along the way, because nothing ever goes perfectly. So how is it that you manage failure within your organization? Or, as I like to see, just one step from success?
Right. I think what's always really important in clinical trials, especially when you look at the outcomes, is if they're not positive trials, you try to learn from the results that you do have. You dive deep into the study design in terms of the endpoints. You do additional analysis, really try to figure out, are there steps along the way where you could have improved the process or made some changes where we can turn those failures into successes. And I think we try to view each step as a learning process. Even when things don't turn out the way you expect them to, you are learning something that will help you for the design of future clinical trials. And as you say, turning those failures into successes. So it's really, I think, the learning process, not really giving up, really trying to understand the information, the data, and how we can turn things around.
Excellent. We have another question that came in, and this is for Bruce. And then again, all of you all are free to jump in. What are the tells you look for in the recruitment process when you are trying to find people who really care? And that was in quotes. And I don't know how you can fake how you care, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is hard to fake it, and I think there's an authenticity. If you're speaking with people, you're connecting with them. It can be harder over Zoom, of course, can't it? We've hired lots of people virtually, and I think we've done a really good job to connect with people and get that feeling. Is this a authentic, trustworthy person? And when you ask them things about, well, why do you want to come and work in the industry if they're coming from outside, or why you want to come with us. I think when people particularly connect around, seeing that their work is going to make a difference for a patient and make a difference for that community, with the new research insights, I think it does sort of shine through. So it's the kind of authenticity as the person, as well as then looking if they really care. So I think it can shine through often, and then it's obvious when people are, if they're really interested in something else. I think you can probe that. But what's exciting when you get those people, on, I think the caring, it really makes a difference when things are going well. But I think in times of adversity, then it really shines through when there's either mistakes that we've got to put right, or we've got to really, as Rob's team have had to, come together to succeed. That's I think the caring will help you through when the times are really tough and you've got to endure.
And that's really when the rubber meets the road, right? When adversity hits, and that's when true leadership shines. So Peyton?
Yeah, just to add on to Bruce, because I think your point on this panel has just been incredibly important. And I think we as leaders know how important it is to interview for looking for that authentic, we care kind of spirit. I do think we have to take that back to our talent acquisition teams. I think they're still very focused on years of experience and a certain pedigree, and we just completely miss, right? This behavioral piece that I think is so critical in the kind of results that actually this panel is describing, and that Rob is living. So I do think that was a really good takeaway that's different from the other panels today. So thank you, Bruce.
Absolutely. And as we look to talent in this industry, and we're going to need more and more of it, so we're going to have to look beyond our own borders to bring in that innovative mindset, maybe from other industries that are doing other breakthrough kinds of work. Really quick, we have about a minute and a half left. I'm going to go really quick around the room, and I'm going to ask you if you think innovation can be taught, or is it part of somebody's DNA? I'm going to start with you, Joe.
Wow, that's the first one.
Sorry. You're up for it.
Okay. I think it has to be part of your DNA. I think you can teach it. But there are some people that inherently just are uncomfortable with new things. I think you have to be someone to challenge the status quo. Sometimes I say break the rules, but maybe that's sometimes misconstrued. But I do think it's part of your DNA to excel at this. You can teach it. You can follow a process. But again, why is innovation a process? I think it's a DNA thing. I do. Rob,
teach your DNA.
I think DNA, but maybe it'll be a mRNA jab one of these days that can help, bring along that in their DNA.
Love it. Bruce, teach our DNA.
So not everyone can come up with the most innovative, most extreme design ideas, but the power comes when you get a group of people working together and through the right techniques and sometimes the right processes. Sometimes the best ideas come from the naysayer in the corner or the quietest person in the room. And there are techniques. We learned it working with IDEO, post-it notes, ideas, people coming up with their own ideas and not just hearing the loudest voice in the room. There are certain ways that sometimes you get the breakthrough idea from the person who you think it's not going to come from. And then, yes, there are other people who will come out with the wacky stuff, but you've got to pay attention to those others. But it's the team that wins, and ultimately bringing those together, the team can achieve great things.
Fantastic. Peyton, teach your DNA.
Yeah, I know DNA for the big ideas, but I agree with Bruce that we actually need folks that we can teach to be part of that change management process. So we don't want to leave anyone out of the room. And sometimes it's that 1 degree pivot, type change, from that's not a big idea that really ultimately is impactful.
Awesome. And Stacy, I'm going to leave the last one to you. Teach your DNA.
Well, I do think DNA is very important, but I think we can also foster innovation by having the right culture at the company and with the team. So I think being able to foster the open environment of acceptance of new ideas where every person's voice is important. So I think fostering is important as well.
What a way to wrap it up. I can't thank you all enough. Joe, Rob, Bruce, Peyton, and Stacy, fantastic job. I am so inspired, and I can't wait to see how you all innovate in the future. And I want to thank our sponsors, Synovian Pharmaceuticals, Calcium and CDO, Ogilvy Health, PowerXL, Syneos Health, Umotif, Health Union, Medtrix Healthcare, Alnylam Pharmaceuticals, eMeds, Levlane, and North Highland. for their support in making this possible today. And I want to thank our audience for being engaged in all those great questions. Please join us for our next Ask the PharmaVoice 100 roundtable at the top of the 3 o'clock hour. Just go to the agenda and click on the session. And congratulations again to all of you for being named a PharmaVoice 100. Thank you. See you on the other side.
Bye, everyone.